Hi, how's it going? Oliver here. Hope you're well. Hope you're keeping safe. Hope you're enjoying the nice sunny weather. If you're in the UK, certainly here we've been having a good time of it the last day or two. Um, in this video, I just wanted to share some insight into the topic of networking, which for some reason is a topic that doesn't really get discussed that much, particularly in the art world and in an art context, which for me is a bit strange because I see it as one of the fundamental kind of two or three cornerstones in terms of how to create new opportunities for yourself. So thought I'd share some insight into what networking is, why we should do it, how you can do it, particularly in this strange uh, pandemic times, some potential pitfalls, and also some confidence boosters as well that you can take forward with you. Um, so, firstly, in terms of defining what networking actually is, now I've got this theory that I think in an arts context, one of the reasons that networking doesn't get discussed a lot is that I think a lot of people, probably myself included at some point, have this idea that networking is this horrible um, exercise of going into a room with a bunch of strangers, often businessy type people, talking nonsense, exchanging cards, and it all being a bit kind of stale and corporate and that sort of thing. And although those types of events certainly exist, for me, networking is much broader than that in terms of um, networking is, I think, just the art of conversation, initiating your own conversations, and also making the most of conversations that come to you to then kind of turn that conversation either into an opportunity or, at the very least, some new contacts and new connections that you can kind of take forward with you. So when you see networking as fundamentally the art of conversation, you can see how important it is because to be able to make significant steps forward in your artistic career, it's quite difficult to do that without having these conversations, without being able to initiate conversations, and without being able to kind of steer conversations in such a way that you can kind of benefit in the form of new opportunities or new connections, new contacts. Um, why should you network? That's a question that maybe a few people have, particularly in the light of social media, that social media and digital marketing and marketing in general can be so powerful. Why would you need to bother networking? Um, I think for me, networking is kind of arguably the most time efficient exercise that you can engage in compared to the other couple of key cornerstones in terms of making opportunities, which are marketing and also opportunities which you have to apply for, either an open call or a competition or something where you have to kind of put forward an application. Marketing is undeniably powerful, but you have to invest a serious amount of time and or some funds in order to really make that work. Similarly, anyone who's done, open call applications or competition applications, they can be extremely time consuming. Whereas networking, I mean, you might only put aside an hour or two a week to do it, but what you could potentially get out of that 1 or 2 hours or, however long it might be compared to marketing and compared to doing all these applications could be quite significant. I also like that with networking that your destiny is completely in your own hands. I mean, being able to initiate conversations with people is just, you can then see networking as just a vast canvas in which you can pretty much do what you want. If you have an idea in your head in terms of an opportunity or someone you want to work with or suggesting an idea, you can do it. Certainly compared to the application-based opportunities, open calls and the like, once you put forward the application, your destiny is in somebody else's hands at that point. So whereas in networking, it's like you're the catalyst, you're the initiator, and your destiny is in your own hands, which I like very much. The other thing I like about networking is it can be full of surprises. Sometimes you never know what you're going to get, particularly when you bear in mind that I don't know if you've heard of this idea of 6 degrees of separation, the idea that you're potentially only 6 people away from anybody that you could think of in the world. You're only kind of 6 people, 6 moves away. And before lockdown, I went to a a seminar, and the guy leading it kind of suggested that they'd now think the real number is more like 3 point something. So potentially you're only 3 people away from anybody that you could think of in the world. So that's why networking is so powerful, in terms of when you start entering a dialogue with someone, you never know what they're in a position to offer you in terms of contacts, in terms of opportunities. It's just, yeah, some of the surprises we've had over the years have been quite significant. So there's some reasons as to why I think networking is a worthwhile investment. Right, how can you network? Or more specifically, where can you network, particularly in this unusual pandemic time that we still find ourselves in? Obviously, going to a physical space and networking in that traditional way is kind of more limited. So here's a few ideas of what you can do to kind of initiate conversations and get the ball rolling. The first is social media. So for me, this is an interesting one, because most people think of social media purely as a marketing asset, platform, whatever you want to call it. So most people think of social media in terms of what content am I going to put out there, how often, which channels am I going to be on, in other words, they're focusing purely on the media side of social media. Whereas I think that the thing that makes social media unique is the social part, is the conversation part. So if you've not done this already, it's just a case of simple things like sending a message to everyone who follows you on your social media, or even who likes a post or comments on a post. At the very least, comment back. Or like I said, you can write a message to someone who follows you with a simple call to action, or just to kind of introduce yourself and make that kind of personal touch, and see if you can get a conversation going from there. Within that, I'm going to suggest the platform of LinkedIn, which it depends what your ambitions are and what your audience is, but LinkedIn can be a very powerful platform, particularly for the networking side of things. A lot of the professional art world and beyond are on there, and it is I've found it to be a good environment, and if you're networking effectively and efficiently, it can be a good use of time as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there in terms of when you're looking to network on social media platforms. Don't entirely rule out LinkedIn, even if on the surface it might look a little bit kind of corporate. It's more than likely that there'll be some very interesting people for you on there. The other thing I'd like to mention is, like we said already, there's obviously real world events aren't really happening so much at the moment, but a lot of institutions that would traditionally put on real world events are sort of doing digital equivalents. I'm sure you've been involved in different webinars or different virtual events, either by galleries or different art institutions or whoever it might be. And some of these, depending on the format, can be a good networking opportunity as well, at the very least in terms of extending your contact base. So have a look at some galleries and some art institutions, both locally, nationally, maybe even internationally as well, and see what they're doing. See if there's room to kind of get involved in the sorts of digital events that they're putting on. Now, the next two I'm going to mention in terms of where you can network, or who you can network with, who you can start conversations with. These two are really kind of critical and are often overlooked. The first is, the best place often to start networking is with a list of people that you already know, which sounds a bit daft and a bit surprising, but if you were to kind of sit there now and kind of list all the people that you've had conversations with over the last few years, you'll suddenly probably start to see some names jump out to you there. They'll be like, oh, I haven't spoken to that person in ages, I wonder what they're doing now. Let's see if we can touch base again. So in terms of who you can network with, just write that list of all the people you've had conversations with, maybe in the last 3 to 5 years. A, you'll probably be surprised how long the list is. B, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be some names in there that you're like, haven't spoken to them for ages, I wonder what they're up to, and who knows where those conversations can lead. So that's the first important source. The second is just to create a wish list, which is something I get most wingman artist clients to do. Is, you know, in an ideal world, who are your dream galleries, who are your dream collaborators, who are your dream publications, media outlets? You know, just create that list of, in an ideal world, here's where I'd love to get some coverage by, or here's where I'd love to do an exhibition by, and kind of use that as a starting point as well, in terms of having a list to work through when it comes to networking and making those conversations. And a final curveball I'll throw in terms of where you can network, who you can network with. There's some interesting sort of digital platforms that have caught my attention in the last few months. One that I shared on the Wingman Facebook group is called Lunch Club, which is a kind of like it's almost like a curated chat roulette for networking. So on Lunch Club, you can say, this is who I am, this is what I'm interested in, here's who I'm looking to network with in terms of like skill set or expertise or industries, and then every week it'll match you with someone and you can just have a conversation. So things like Lunch Club are particularly effective if you're not overly confident or used to networking yet. And the nice thing about digital networking is you can always have an escape clause. You can just shut the thing down if it's getting too much and just say, oh, sorry, the technology broke. So that's a nice little added bonus of things like Lunch Club, which is sort of the, you know, digital equivalent of real world networking, is that there's an easy get out clause which helps with confidence with certain people. Right, so you've got your list of people that you want to network with, either your social media followers or people you've identified on social media, or people you already know, or your wish list of people, or people on Lunch Club. How do you actually network? Well, the fun thing about networking is there's no hard and fast rules. The only thing I would say is, particularly when you're networking digitally, is just to engage as normally as you can. In terms of what I mean by that is, what I see some people do when they're networking digitally is they'll try and pack everything into one email or one message. This is who I am, this is what I'm all about, here's what I'd love to do, and often it's just too much, you know. Whereas if you were to meet people in real life, the conversation would be a lot more kind of natural and fluid, introducing yourselves, what do you do, and using that as a starting point. So in terms of how to network, I'd say, in the age-old advice of mums, be yourself. I hate to use the word authentic because it's become one of these sort of corporate buzzwords, but it really does ring true. Be your authentic self. Don't try to play up to people. Don't try and be something you're not. Just put yourself on the table as is and see who you kind of click with, who you connect with. And if you're doing it digitally, then just try in your mind's eye, imagine you're meeting that person face to face. How would you interact with them? How would you say hello? And how would you introduce yourself? And use that as a sort of starting point for creating that first message. And within that first message, what I typically recommend is just put one simple kind of call to action in that message. So it might be, for example, if it's somebody that you already have connected with before, it might be a case of saying, you know, can we have a catch up for 15 minutes? And then within that catch up, explain your situation, explain your ambitions, and ask, you know, have you got any contacts or any opportunities that you're aware of that might help me? If you're reaching out to an artist that you really admire to try and get some insights in terms of their journey, might just be a case of your one call to action could be something along the lines of, would you be open to sharing some of your experiences with me? Just keep it simple. Like I say, a lot of people make the mistake of putting too much in that first piece of contact. Keep it light, keep it friendly, and just have one kind of request or one question, one call to action in there. And that's the only guidance I'm going to give you in this video in terms of how to do it. The rest is just the art of conversation and the art of being yourself, and seeing where that takes you. but as best you can, engage with people digitally as you would in the real world, and keep it light, keep it simple, with one call to request, and just know that networking is just a slightly more curated version of marketing. It is a numbers game to some extent, so don't expect a reply from everybody. Just put yourself out there and see what happens. Right, very quickly, some pitfalls in networking that I've experienced. There are certainly some time wasters out there, and identifying time wasters is just one of those things that just comes with experience, really. The more you network, the more you have dialogue with people, the more you'll develop a sixth sense for people who are either just chatting for the sake of chatting, or maybe the other pitfall could be exploitation, in terms of, I think a lot of people, particularly in certain professional industries and walk of life, as soon as they think of art or creativity, they think of freebies. And I'm not totally against freebies. There are definitely some things that you might want to consider doing for free that will have some kind of distinctive benefits for you. But that certainly is something just to not be worried about, but just be mindful of. Is this person wasting my time, or are they looking for some kind of free commission or free, or whatever it might be? So, but like I said, that only comes with experience. So don't worry about it too much. Just be mindful that some people can be a bit of a waste of time, or might be looking to kind of exploit you or your talent in some way. So just keep that in mind as you're going along. Finally, I just wanted to share some confidence boosters when it comes to networking, because particularly for people like me who have a bit of a background in social anxiety, networking can be a daunting thing, and I think that's why a lot of people kind of avoid doing it. It can be very scary. So the ultimate thing here is your confidence will only significantly increase the more you do it. So that the best confidence booster you can have is just to join something like Lunch Club and just try it. Or even a more kind of light touch move would be to, as we suggested earlier, reach out to people you've had conversations with already in the past, and just initiate a new conversation with them. Having said that, here's three kind of specifics. Don't know how many fingers are held up there. Three specific confidence boosters that might help. These have all come from a book called How to Talk to Absolutely Anyone by Mark Rhodes, which is a book I encountered many years ago, and it's full of practical tips. So if you want to explore further, then I definitely look into acquiring this book. The first confidence booster is a really interesting one. It's helped me a lot, particularly with sort of in-person networking. And that is the idea of visualizing the person you're talking to as a friend, which sounds kind of bizarre and abstract to sort of project somebody else's face onto the face that you're looking at. But it can be extremely helpful, because when you're networking, when you're communicating with people, it's often your facial expression and your tone of voice will say more to the person than the actual words that you're using. So even if it's just for a flash of a second, visualizing a friendly, familiar face in front of you, you might be surprised in terms of how that changes your tone of voice, your face expression, your body language. So I definitely wanted to throw that one in there as a bit of an interesting curveball that's also helped me personally as well. So give that one a try. The other one that's been very good is the 5-second rule. So what Mark Rose suggests is, when you have the inclination to speak to somebody, try and do it within 5 seconds. Because I don't know about you, but the longer I sit and think about something, the more I kind of slowly talk myself out of it. Now this is maybe a little bit more difficult with digital side of things, but maybe it equates in terms of, if you're drafting a message, when you have the inclination to press the send button after you've had a quick check of it, do it within 5 seconds. Just kind of, don't give yourself the opportunity to talk yourself out of it. The final confidence booster is it kind of relates to scenario planning in terms of thinking what would the worst case scenario be in a conversation and how would you respond. So something that Mark Rose mentions in that book, How to Talk to Absolutely Anyone, is if you're facing a critical comment or someone who's negative, just having like a go-to response up your sleeve. So Mark suggests, by calmly responding, okay, or that's interesting, is another phrase that he suggests using. If someone's being critical or negative, just have that scenario, play that scenario out beforehand. What's the worst that could happen in this conversation, and how would I respond in that way? And I find that really helps confidence in terms of having that scenario sorted, that worst case scenario. What would I do if the worst was to happen, or the person was to be critical or rude or whatever it is? So just make sure you've got all those scenarios covered, and again, that will really help your confidence because you know that you've got the worst case scenario covered. That's it. I've rambled on for 20 minutes. That's probably a new record for me. But I hope there's some insights in there that you can find useful. Again, I can't stress highly enough the importance of networking, especially when you see it as fundamentally just the art of conversation and dialogue, because in reality that's where most things happen in terms of creating and getting new opportunities for yourself and new contacts. Most of it comes through dialogue. So if it's something you've overlooked in the past, then hopefully this has given you some insights in terms of where you can do it, how to do it, and some confidence boosters in there as well. As ever, there's more information available at theartistwingman.com. And within theartistwingman.com, you're very welcome to book a free 30-minute chat with me if there's anything in this video that you want to discuss further, or if you have any other topics that you want to discuss as well. I'd love to hear from you and have a conversation with you. So maybe that's part of your networking homework is to have a free chat with me and see if I can help you out in some way in that no obligation conversation. So there we go. That's networking in a brief nutshell. Hope there's something in there that you can take forward and that you find useful. And keep safe, keep happy, keep enjoying the nice weather, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.